This episode dives right in the middle of a conversation Dave and I were having right before Jianggan joined about big brand names such as Nike pursuing heavily D2C online strategies that have since then backfired for them. We also later discuss how brands need to be more omnichannel focused at scale. This conversation stemmed from the fact that Amazing Grays recently hired a new head of marketing that used to work with Dave. Let's dive right in.
They're in like both first party, their own stores, and a lot of third party distribution, right? And so basically what he did is what a lot of companies in the last years have to do. They're like, oh, I want to be like pure online. I want to like cut out the middle person, take all that fat margin for myself. It'll be beautiful, right? And so they did like kind of what the movie studios did during like the streaming wars last couple of years. They took all their best content, so all their best products, all their best shoes, and they made it only available on Nike.com online, right? But then the trade-off is like they left this huge vacuum in a lot of like their retail locations, which allowed their competitors to come in and like eat up a lot of the market share.
People still shop there.
Right. So it was sort of okay. It kind of worked during the COVID era because obviously nothing was open. But then like post-COVID, everything came back, you really sort of like saw sort of the weaknesses in the model. So and actually their gross margin has declined because they had to pay so much in digital marketing dollars to Meta to buy traffic, right? So this is like,
we know this story is all this time.
Yeah, this story is all this time. But anyway, so like to bring it back, right? I think that's the same story with Amazing Grace, right? Like most of that business is still an offline business. And I think you need someone who like really understands how to build
heavily distribution.
Yeah, exactly. It's offline distribution, right? It's like an old school business, right? And like I think you need someone that like understands that side, like trying to build out an online business.
You're good, Jack.
Like number one, I just don't think we can hear you.
Yeah,
I don't think it's like a good long term strategy. It's not. It needs to be omni-channel. Like long story short, right? And so you need someone that if they're
it needs to be omni-channel.
You need someone that understands the offline component because that's
There's so many problems with that though. Like just finding talent in Asia, this whole cycle is very different. Where I think Zalora made that mistake. They never pushed omnichannel. They've always been trying to be a pure online player in Southeast Asia, which was a huge mistake.
Yeah, but like we've talked about this so many times already. It doesn't work. Like if you're a brand and you're trying to do like online only, it like never works long term.
Well, yeah, long term. There was a period of time where it was this big new growth channel, I guess, but then people kind of mistaked it as like being the only business if you're trying, especially if you're big, right? If you're small, you probably could just do it, but you stay small, right? Or like maybe go to medium size, whatever that definition is.
Dave, why do you think it never works?
Because you're transitioning from like there. What is the word for it? It's like So okay, we should quantify this, or I should qualify it because we're talking about if you're a brand, right? If you're one of these platforms, that's maybe a different story. But like
heavily branded.
Yeah, if you're like the brand itself and you try to go pure DTC, it doesn't work for a bunch of reasons. Like number one, in most Southeast Asian countries, right? Like most of the retail market is still not online. That's just not where the customers are, right? It's still like, I don't know what the latest stat is, like what, 10, 15% penetration or something like that, right? And then like, if you're like,
is it so low still?
In Southeast Asia?
13 to 14%.
Yeah, it's still super low. It's super low, right? So like 90% of the market is still like offline. And then number two, right? Like you have to spend so much money to generate traffic. Just think about it this way, right? Like when you're shopping in a grocery store, right? You have like it's browsing behavior. Like if you go walk through like a grocery store aisle and you see some snacks, you're like, oh, maybe I'll buy this, maybe I'll buy that, right? If you go to an online model, you need to have someone like literally recall your brand, type it into the browser, and then buy it. And that's like a much higher bar sometimes than just paying like distribution fees and getting it in front of people, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like you kind of differentiate between demand generation and then try like harvest that demand. And I think a lot of people get like tripped up because it grows quickly and then it's hot, it's new, it's exciting. And the first couple of years you're like, oh, it's so great, and maybe like my margins are going to be better. But like eventually, right, like the ad companies will like erode away your margin, the competitors will show up, and you haven't built anything like real durable value. Right? Like this is something that I have a lot of experience in. Like I feel like, I haven't seen like any of these D2C brands execute or create like long-term durable. Even like the big ones in the US, right? Like think about like 10, 15 years ago, all the big D2C brands like Away, Warby Parker, what's that one? The Razor one. What is that? Like the shaves to you, Dollar Shave Club,
Oh,
Dollar
Dollar
Shave
right?
Shave
Club.
Club.
Yeah, you either all get acquired.
Well, they were
Yeah, so
acquired.
if you're acquired, you're okay because then you get plugged into because you got acquired by Gillette. So Gillette just plug them into their entire ecosystem and then that works. It's
But that's
additive.
how CPG
Yeah, it's
works,
additive. That's how
right?
CPG works, right? But if you're trying to like
Yeah.
do pure play, I mean, I don't know. Like as an entire investment thesis, I'm really bearish on DTC at this point. Like whenever someone
Well,
says,
that's what we saw, the destruction of value of like all the those Amazon aggregators.
yeah, especially if you already have an existing brand and then you're trying to like transition your existing brand into a pure DTC play, that destroys so much value, right? It's incredibly value
Actually,
destructive.
what's really worked is these, like, you don't see them online. You see them, all these kind of big brands that you don't really know, but they're like in niches, but they're all offline, but they exist like forever.
Exactly.
Like the ones in departments, the ones in department stores, and like like aunties buy them, or it's like they're kind of like, maybe it's just like the veneer within a department store, and behind they make
So I mean,
everything. I don't know, but yeah.
if they're there and department stores, I mean the traffic is relatively stable, right? I mean unless there's something major happens, which is like the
Well, it's
pandemic.
declining now, I guess. Is what
It's
people are
declining,
saying.
but it takes
I don't
like
know.
20 years for it to decline to zero.
Yeah,
I mean, if
yeah,
it ever
yeah,
gets to that point.
yeah,
I had an interesting perspective from some brand operators I talked to in Indonesia last week about D2C and online per se.
Sure.
So they said that I mean, for pure D2C brands, it's never possible to plan your inventory because the traffic online runs by pulses,
Yeah,
and
100. That's 100% right. Yeah, that's 100%. This guy that
yeah,
wrote this Nike article was just saying this
yeah,
exact thing. He was saying like 5, 10 years ago, Nike had demand planning down to a T,
mm,
and now you look at their like
mm.
balance sheet and their
Mm,
demand, it's like creeping up slowly. It was like $5 billion and $8 billion, and now they're like at $10 billion of inventory. Like the entire demand planning, like that muscle has just gone out the window because you can't do it.
It's, yeah, it's very hard, and sometimes you can't predict. You can't predict. Even if you like spend most money with shopping festivals, you still can't predict that you will get the relevant traffic.
Yeah,
Um,
correct,
so, so, so,
correct.
so the result of this is that you have limited screen space. You have limited like sort of real estate where you can display your brand to your consumers, and that real estate becomes very expensive. So everyone's fighting for that real estate.
Exactly. Yeah,
no,
exactly the point.
I think like that's why, like, that might be a very good moat if you can really keep that and understand your channels. Because like I know Zalora, even today, they're still like, their buyers are still overbuying, and they don't really have optimized the demand plan to the point where they understand, I guess, their channels and customers. And it's just like, I think for maybe, I don't know, is offline more stable? Like when you were doing Althea, was it easy to do demand planning and you understand it really well? Or yours was just pure drop ship, right? So actually
Well,
doesn't
ours
really,
was
you
pure
didn't really
online.
buy it, I
But
guess,
okay, you
right?
think about it this way, right? So, like, just you think about inherently how this system works. So, basically, demand generation is all handled um, algorithmically, right? It's done by Meta and it's done by Alphabet, right? And increasingly now, like, if you plug in into the ad platforms, you're not even doing much. You just say, I want to acquire a customer at X, whatever my LTV is, and they will go and find
Yeah.
like 1,000 customers or 100,000 customers, whatever that is, at just like 1 or 2 percentage points below whatever your LTV number actually is. So theoretically, yes, you are long term net profitable. But what I'm guaranteeing is happening is there's a lot of waste that's happening. It's not like they're optimizing
Probably,
for you, right? And the number, so that's
yeah.
number one, right? So there's a lot of waste in that because number one, that entire discipline has been abstracted away to the platforms in many cases, and that's a black box these days, right? And you
Because
know there's wastage
yeah,
inside that because that's how they make their money, right? They just, I mean, it's a fair
yeah.
argument. They say like, as long as I
Well,
bring you a
what I
customer that you
think
didn't have, a marginal customer, you should be happy. But that's not necessarily going to be the most efficient customer you could have acquired, right?
my hypothesis is that within these big corporates, there's a lot of employee churn of someone who manages that, and what ends up happening, you use the same budget to probably buy the same customer to reactivate them,
That's
right?
it's a lot of that
So if
too.
you keep using, right, in Rocket, the number one rules, like, well, technically the number one rule was never to rebuy a customer again, but like obviously that didn't happen. You would just keep burn,
Dude.
and keep buying and buying and buying. So
Well, I told you the story, right? So when we were doing Althea, right? We obviously, like every e-commerce company, you would have like first-time purchaser incentives, like 10% off, free shipping, whatever it was, right?
Yeah, correct, first time.
And for a long time, we didn't really crack down because we're like, oh, growth, it's fine. And then at a certain point, we're like, okay, we should probably be a bit smarter about this and crack down on this, or like at least put some controls in place. Yeah, some controls. And so we set up like mobile phone two-factor authentication. You have to like verify on a mobile phone number your account, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like one day on happenstance, I was just like going through customer data and orders in Indonesia. I was just like scrolling through and I was like, why do I see this like same address like 30 or 40 times, right? And so then obviously I'm like, okay, fine. I go and I dig through the database. And what happened was like this customer had registered 350 phone numbers to the same address to like get like, it was like $5 of value with free shipping. I don't remember what it was, right? And then, at that point you're like,
yeah, well, there's your marketing budget.
yeah, it's number one. That's like, you're like, why, right? And number two, I was like, I wasn't even that mad.
So
I'm
that
like,
guy was clever merchant, right?
I wasn't even that mad. I'm like, well, if you went and bought 350 SIM cards,
that's what the system you built. That's the system you built, So.
Right. So there's definitely a lot of wastage that's inside this entire discipline. But also, you think about like structurally how it works. It's a bid system, right? So you're auctioning. All things you're auctioning. You're auctioning and you're bidding. Right. So as the more competition comes into your customer target segment, it's going to get incrementally more expensive as time goes on because there's going to be more and more players. It doesn't go down. It never goes down.
Yeah.
Right. If you think about it on a long-term trajectory,
well understood, I think.
It never goes down because that's just like every day there's like more brands, more players. It just keeps growing and growing. And to be fair, like inventory also grows and customers also grow, but I don't think it grows at the same pace as how expensive customer acquisition is, right? Like I could see it at Althea. Like when we first started, I mean, to be fair, we also like ran out of our initial customers, so there's some dynamics there. But like you did customer acquisition in 2000 and what was this, like 14, 16, whatever it was. You could probably acquire a customer in Malaysia for like, I don't know, like $5, give or take, right? And I talk to people that are doing it now, and they're telling me, yeah, like our like CACs are like 10 to 15, right? And it's not like our price points are that different. It's same category, roughly, like beauty, consumer good type things. So it's you can see it. You look at like a lot of these like larger players, larger brands, and like you look at their annual reports, you look at their like CAC costs, just like Warby Parker, all these guys just keeps going up, never goes down, right? So it's like it's a never-ending pit of money.
Yeah, but I think a lot of this. Go ahead, Jianggan.
Did these guys believe in D2C for long term? Because for me, the natural thinking is that D2C allows you to test the brand. I mean, if your supply chain is short, right? If you can organize the goods, organize the production in a relatively short period of time with relatively low cost, and you don't have to like spend all the time negotiating with offline channels, actually putting the goods in offline channels. So as long as you see some traction, you should start like already doing what the brand builders do, right? I mean, branding, offline channels, distributors, etc. So you think for people like Warby Parker, etc., is that because they really believed in D2C, so that's why they stayed in D2C for too long, or is that because they have structural challenges? They knew that okay, they can't be D2C forever, but for whatever reason, they didn't manage to execute.
I think
Warby Parker is different.
Yeah, I think every D2C company comes across this. Every D2C company sooner or later realizes that it's cheaper just to build a store than it is to acquire your like 50,000th Facebook customer, right?
It's when you see the declining, economics on your online channels, it's very clear. Like, okay, where do you get growth? Right? I think it's a natural progression. Number one, I think Warby Parker is not the best example because they were very actually brand focused first. Actually, without being a brand company that was brand plus online, it probably wouldn't even have worked. And that kind of allowed them to kind of go offline.
Well, Warby Parker was also.
And then I think
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, and I was just gonna say like, I think there's just a limit to that quote unquote big niche within glasses. There's only so much you could take from the big, market share from the back end of like the same factory who makes it, right? So I think they just hit a natural ceiling, and then that's all you're kind of gonna get, right? So it's just, I don't know. Like unless they start doing other things adjacent to glasses, sunglasses and beyond that, I don't know what else you can keep doing. Maybe smart glasses. I don't know. Right.
Yeah, you also have to remember, like, Warby Parker's original thesis wasn't just D2C. It was basically like Luxottica, which is
Correct.
like a big Italian fashion house,
Correct.
is screwing everyone, and they're
Yeah.
charging like ridiculous
Yeah.
margins. They're charging like $300 margins on a pair of glasses, where we can get away with charging, or
So it's taking
it's like,
margin.
it's arbitrage. It was a pure margin arbitrage. Well, not pure, but a lot of that was like a margin arbitrage play, right? And so what I think your point, Jianggan, is like, I think DTC as a sector is going to grow, right? But if you're an operator within DTC, I think it's like very infirm ground that you stand on. Because I think what you're describing is ultimately it's like kind of like a race to the bottom, right? So if you, and I've said this like so many times already, I'm just repeating myself now, but you look at like all the big and the successful like case studies of like people have done well like with this DTC model, like we talked about it last time, right? Like the Temu, Shein type product businesses, right? Those are like super low cost, super low, well, maybe not super low margin, but like super low cost, very commoditized products, right? If you're like a branded product, high margin, and like you move D2C and that becomes like your exclusive strategy, that you just like implode your brand. I have never, and so I've never, personal anecdote, right? I've never seen like a large brand like move their entire, like reorient to DTC completely and have it like go really well for them. Like never, it always blows up in their face sooner or later.
Because it's what we talked about earlier. It's about scale. What Jianggan's saying is valid when you're small.
Yeah.
But like I think purely scaling this, like we've seen this here locally in Malaysia with what's that like brand company that sold the shorts? Was it RPG?
RPG or whatever.
Yeah, Una Brand, RPG, like those guys, like at a certain scale, they raise money, but they can't grow beyond, like, I mean, once your brand starts to die, you have to find the next one to pivot, right? And then there's like a limited time and a limited scale for each of these, niches.
Correct.
So like, how can you compound it to a machine? It's very, very hard.
Correct. Also think about it this way, right? Like every business, right? Your margin will get competed away eventually, and you're right. Yeah. So like in a DTC model, like your cycle of like product ideation, testing, creation, go to market is super fast. You're right, because you can cut out, it's responsive, right? But by that same token, someone else can do the exact same thing to you in a really quick way too, right? Like there's nothing that sustainable about what any of these people are doing. Like anyone that can like figure out a supply chain and like kind of like where it comes from, you don't have to do that, right? Yeah. You can replicate it. There's like no real moat to these businesses.
Well, because fundamentally, if you look really deep down the chain, it's basically a thesis built on top of the platform, and you're basically trying to game the algorithm, right? And the algorithm is going to keep changing. So unless you can really master that, which is almost like a Shein, I guess, if you like to really bring it all the way to the extreme, that's kind of what it is. But like these small guys, it's a very different muscle when you try to transition, like when you max out your channel, then transition to a brand. They just probably don't know how to build a brand.
Yeah.
It's like two different things.
Exactly that. That's exactly what it is. I agree. I think you said it really well.
We talk about Shein. There are two things which they do extraordinarily, right? I mean, first is the supply chain. I mean, they can get goods organized within like a day or two. So that's something which already a tall order for lots of D2C brands in countries where you are not close to the supply chain, where you are not going to spot a new design and have that done over one day, and you have to like wait for some outsourced partner in another country to do it, and you get it in 2 weeks, and you realize that it's no longer trendy anymore. So that's the first thing, and the second thing for Shein is that they are targeting demographic which buys this kind of stuff like frequently enough. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I mean, if you're glasses, I mean, how many times you do buy the glasses? And if you are like young people buying disposable fashion, and you can do it like every week, and even if you don't buy, you browse it. So that kind of activity helps you retain the customers.
Yeah, correct.
What I'm thinking is like if you are either an investor or a founder looking at this space, what's really interesting is that if you really want to put this like in a framework, it's like if you want to be kind of like this kind of this kind of platform D2C play, you have to think of it in terms of like a Shein, like so it's like big scale and hyper optimization, or you're thinking of it as like, are you a brand, right? Like I think if you kind of straddle either one, you're not going to really do nothing. So it's like you put in these two different buckets if you really want to either invest or build in this space, I think. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. This is why I think the brand aggregator plays never work, because you don't do either really well. You're kind of like neither here nor there.
Uh,
I think Shein is harder though, huh? I don't know. My opinion.
So about 2-3 years ago, when VC was still a thing in China, there were like lots of companies being invested to.
When VC was still a thing.
Yeah, to do the, I mean, Shein for shoes, Shein for this, Shein for that, and none of them particularly worked out. I mean, some of them are still alive, but people realize that I think what Shein has done for a particular category, for a particular type of supply chain optimization is fairly unique. So so I think Shopee tried to optimize that and couldn't make it work as well. So
because they're not going as deep, right?
Correct, but I think that's
Shopee as a platform, they can't go as deep because if you start going deep into supply chain yourself, you alienate all the sellers who are on your platform. I mean, how much traffic do you give?
You alienate your own machine. Yeah.
Yes, which makes it harder for you to go deep.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What's the long-term perspective for Shein? Because in a sense, like if it's also some type of hyper optimization arbitrage type play that they're squeezing, how long can they do this for before the value erodes away or it changes?
I think that's something their management is trying to figure out as well, right? I mean, last year onwards, they started trying marketplace, and maybe they, if you look at Brazil, they started trying the local supply chain, etc., etc. So my sense is that they don't know either. They're trying a few different things. They have a few different theses, but they don't know what will really work.
It must be like an Amazon. Like Amazon pushed really hard to offline, right? Like you have no choice at some point. Like, like the Amazon almost conquered. I mean, up until recently, the past few years, where they're flooded with Chinese goods. Before that, though, right, they hit like this wall of online where it's just going to match the growth of the economy, and then like you have to find other channels to kind of bring new tech plus offline. I guess maybe that's a thesis.
Offline is hard for marketplaces. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing we talked about. Like if you're a brand versus like some type of aggregator, right? So it's like different muscles, different teams, different things. So, but maybe that's what Shein has to look at. Maybe they have to look more. I mean, I think we've been seeing this. We've been seeing a lot of innovation in the CPG space, in the brand space. A lot of these old brands are getting displaced, or even locally in Malaysia, right? Starbucks, we talked about this briefly in the group, right? Starbucks, a lot of them are closing down, being displaced by the like local competitors. Some Chinese competitors are coming in. So maybe there's a whole kind of refresh for this younger generation coming in of Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They want different things probably.
But that's a cost thing too,
package,
right? That's also a cost thing. Like Starbucks in Malaysia is like, I don't know, like 20 ringgit, whatever it is these days. And like a lot of these guys you're talking about are selling drinks at like 5, 10 maybe, right?
You say that, but then like Zeus and Gigi in Malaysia, they're selling almost at the same prices or even more, right? It's just they've probably branded better and localized to taste better or innovated better on what a younger person might want, I think. So like,
I agree.
Price points are not that different from Starbucks. They're not that different.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like June's obsessed with like Zeus and Gigi, and like I'm just like, ugh. It's like he's paying like 20, 30 ringgit for a drink. I'm like, okay, buddy.
No, but I think that's true. I think the branding of Zeus is much nicer. It's like the stores are just nicer.
It appeals.
It's like brightly lit and it's an open, right? And like I find like all the Starbucks.
Yeah, Starbucks are older, darker.
And they're kind of dingy and dirty in Malaysia, if we're being honest. Like all the Starbucks are kind of like you go in there and it's like it's not a very like nice. It's ambiance wise, right?
It's like I mean.
Yeah.
It's like when you guys travel nowadays. I mean, the business hotels you guys stay in. I would like something which is bright, which is new, and I don't like the likes of like Sheraton, which just looks like I don't know, so 1980s.
It depends, on the hotel chains. A lot of them are doing like within a chain, right? You pick the brand that is your they target different segments too, right? So like you just don't pick that old Sheraton.
Yeah, that's precisely my point, right? I mean, the Starbucks might not appeal to all the demographics because of a certain sort of layout, certain design and stuff.
Yeah. The hotel chains are definitely doing it. They definitely segment and refresh. But like maybe the chain that you kind of follow doesn't have the brand in your region. It's harder, right? It's like hotels you're kind of stuck to your city. So
yeah.
I don't stay in a hotel in my city, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't stay hotels. I don't have the cash. I stay at people's houses. I freeload.
No, yeah, I'm poor now. Same here.
Try
to stay with friends whenever I can. So what's happening with you, Jianggan? Where are you now? What country are you in?
I'm in Singapore, back home.
Oh, you're back in Singapore.
Today is a holiday, National Day of Singapore.
Ah.
So you will see fireworks.
So what's your biggest What's your, oh yeah, happy National Day
Happy
then.
birthday, Singapore.
What's your,
I've been trying to correct everyone there, and they realize that it's a losing battle, right? I've been trying to correct everyone, say, hey, you can't say happy birthday Singapore because Singapore existed before 1965. You should say happy birthday to Republic of Singapore, which came to existence in 1965. But people say, why so harsh?
Yeah, why so pedantic, man? Come on.
Why?
Take this,
Why are you being so
just take
anal
the sentiment,
retentive?
you know, it's like a nice thing. We're saying happy birthday, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So
That's Jianggan's personality.
Don't be that guy.
No, he is that guy though. That's whole Jianggan shtick. Jianggan is that guy.
That's fair. You are that guy. That's fair enough.
So Alex, you were asking a question?
No, it's just like because you spent so much time in Indonesia. What is your biggest takeaway, or what stood out the most of what people in the audience can maybe learn from, or maybe update us, refresh us?
Biggest takeaway is that as long as you don't do tech, as long as you do something consumer focused, you see tons of opportunities. You see tons of opportunities for you to make lots of profit. And you see, as long as you are not obsessed with efficiency, as long as your problem to solve additional problem is not to make your existing employees efficient, you hire more people, then your life becomes much easier. And because I've looked at lots of consumer businesses, and some of the bosses showed me the P&L. It's just crazy, right? I mean, you pay 3 years rent upfront to open a restaurant, and you got all your investment cooked in like 9 months. So especially for people from China, they're used to running things in a super efficient way because it's super competitive. Once they go to Indonesia, they realize that whatever method they have, like all the refined operations, or the sort of the metric-driven sort of KPIs for every single aspect of the business, can't get executed. But once they let go of that a little bit, and they said, okay, we just look at whatever people in the market are doing.
Yes, correct.
We do it like 30% more efficient than they are, then that means like, I don't know, 15-20% more profit than these guys. Then I can lower the price and retain the same profit. They are more competitive.
Yeah. I have 2 points to that, because I was talking with Siko about this, and a lot of the people, especially the Chinese that enter the market, they kind of want to do it in the Chinese way, where there's like 1 or 2 guys on the ground, and those guys work really hard. They pay them really well and push it to profitability, and then they only hire. But like that just doesn't really work in Southeast Asia. Like typically you need to spend a lot more than you probably think for one country, and then like even spend more if you want to do another country, and then kind of like, it's like you said, you kind of want to follow what the locals do, right? And I think it's just the way people do expansion here is, it's just very different from like the Chinese method or what other people think, right? So I guess
I think I can understand. I mean, for for Chinese businesses, it's particularly hard because first they're used to this almost constant anxious state that they need to excel, they need to do it better, and once they come to a country where everybody's seemingly chilled. I mean, everybody gets stuck in traffic for 2 hours, nobody complains. They lose their anchor. They become even more anxious.
They lose themselves. Oh no, what is this?
Yeah,
That's true.
What can I do? Like this person, I told him very specifically these are the things he needs to do, and he understands 20% of that. He does 5% of it. So what should I do? And when this happens, I mean, obviously you can't change the market. So what you can change yourself.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've met a few Chinese who've been able to really adapt well, actually. I mean, but granted, they work in bigger corporate like Grad, but once you live here long enough and you understand, then I guess things probably go smoother for you. But the other point, the other point I wanted to make was that I think your insight, I think fundamentally hasn't changed in the past 10 years. Like I was having this discussion with Pei Fu a few years ago when he was a VC and looking specifically at Indonesia. And if you look at the biggest like billion-dollar companies in Indonesia, they are all actually consumer-facing, right? It's like they don't have the infrastructure or the policy or whatever that's built up the B2B side, and that's just going to be a long-term gain that you need more government support. So like if you were ever to make money and you were to ever invest, it was always just going to be consumer, especially if you want to see higher ROI faster, right? Like sure, there's opportunity in B2B. It's just going to be a lot harder, a lot slower grind, probably than what people think. So I think that thesis probably has never changed for Indonesia, in my opinion. But like it's, I guess, a good reminder, a refresh, or maybe you're seeing more of that activity being successful now, I guess.
I mean, before I went into Indonesia last week, I read this book by a Dutch guy. The book is called Majapahit. So it describes the empire in Java, the main island of Indonesia, between 13th to 16th century. I can't remember the exact years, but that was a big empire which existed for 300 years. And what this author did is that he compiled all these accounts of different travelers, of different historians during those period. And what I remember particularly was this Chinese traveler who followed one of the fleets from China in 14 something, like 600 years ago. He went to Java and he walked to the capital of Majapahit, and he was describing what he saw. Right, he said, okay, the streets are okay, and there are people walking around. There are always guys like standing or sitting below a tree. Then they were like chewing betel nuts and stuff. And when I go to a big square called Alun-Alun, and during the day it's quiet because it's hot. But as the sun starts to set, 4 or 5 p.m., people start showing up, kids playing balls, and people selling sort of satay sticks, and guys sitting there doing nothing but just chatting. And I was looking at it and said, shit, I mean, Alun-Alun, I just went to Alun-Alun in Bandung. It looks exactly the same as like 600 years ago.
Hey, you took the high-speed train. How was it?
It was high speed, and it was the Chinese made high speed train. They display the speed in each wagon, and the one I took from Jakarta to Bandung, the highest speed
300?
348.
Wow.
The highest display was 348.
How many hours did it take? Like 2.5 hours?
No, from Jakarta to Bandung, normally if you take a car, it's about 4 hours because you have to go through the hyper-congested industrial area of Bekasi. If you take the train, it's 29 minutes from Jakarta Halim to Bandung Padalarang. But the thing is that Bandung Padalarang is not in the city center of Bandung. So you get out, you take a local commuter train to the city. That's another like 20 minutes. So altogether an hour, which is still much better than what you used to have.
I think, this is like probably the only one in Southeast Asia that is this advanced, right? I know they have some in Laos, but like they're not as fast apparently.
Probably, the one in Laos, I think connecting Laos to Kunming in China or something, that was not designed to be 350.
Yeah.
So the one in that was fairly similar to what you would experience in China, except of course the design, the layout, but it's different. But if you look at the sort of how they train the people, how the tracks are built, I mean, it's obviously Chinese technology and protocols.
Yeah.
What I find particularly funny is the radio announcements in the train. Every time they make an announcement, it's always followed by whoosh whoosh. Yes, like the train's called whoosh. So
whooshy whooshy.
Whoosh, whoosh.
Sounds like moshi moshi.
Yeah.
Moshi mosh.
So this is something you would not see in a Chinese train, right? Because it's a government-run organization. You always need to have a serious tone.
Yeah. China very different. Southeast Asia.
But one thing I saw in Bandung, which surprised me a bit, is that we do this assessment of food delivery market share every year in Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, our numbers showed that the Shopee food grew a lot in Indonesia, which nobody believed, right? And every investor we talked to is saying, hey, I've just been to Jakarta, I don't see Shopee food. And truth be told, I didn't see much Shopee food presence in Jakarta, but when you go to Bandung, it's freaking everywhere. It's just everywhere.
Wow. So it's the outer cities that are growing then.
Yeah, so I don't know whether this strategy actually works, but you do see them everywhere.
I think in a big market, it's like in India, right? There's tier 2 versus tier 1 cities. Like there was Flipkart for a long time, and then Amazon came in, and they kind of flipped which strategy and focus. And when the market's big enough, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, when the market is big enough, we allow different kind of strategies to play out. I mean, you don't know which one will win, but of course, you can see like a bit of difference. I mean, eventually maybe they will converge.
Yeah. What do you think? You think Grab or Shopee is winning in Indonesia right now?
I do think that I don't know. There are a few times where I was going somewhere. I always use the local taxi app, the Bluebird, because you can the app is shared. The map is shared, but you can reliably call a Toyota Alphard in a category called Silverbird. And
fancy.
Yeah.
and some of them have the highest configuration possible, but they charge the same price. I think for people from Singapore, it makes sense because if you look at the price, it's cheaper than taxes in Singapore. Then you say no brainer, right? So
look at this, Mr. Strong Currency man. Come to Indonesia and spend it on Alfreds.
Japanese car. Anyway, so but if you look at, I mean, all the locals I've been with, all the people staying locally, I don't see. I mean, over like 5 days, I didn't see anyone using Gojek. Everyone was using Grab.
Anecdotal, maybe in your circles, I guess.
Possible. Maybe I go to Bandung, or maybe I go to, like, I don't know, Malang. I will see more people using Gojek.
All right, let's wrap up with Dave. Dave, what's happening in US? What's the vibe and the feel? I feel there's a big change in at least the media, and it feels real to me that there's a big change with the Democrats and Kamala Harris and her new pick for VP. I think things seem to be changing, you think, in America, or what's the vibe over there, or what's the focus?
I don't think anyone cares. I think, well, there's like this big thing where it's like, I think you're in the situation where, like, as a foreigner looking into it, or not a foreigner, but someone like outside of the US looking in, like it basically, like, long story short, it's like there's such thing as being too online, right? Like the online world is not like the real world. Just kind of like how the stock market is not the real economy. There's a disconnect, right? Yeah. And it's entirely possible to spend too much time online, right? I think a lot of people fall into this trap. I mean, if you talk to someone who's like super, like, the people that consume that content on a regular basis, super engaged, yeah, for them this is like, it's like momentous and it's like big change, groundswell, blah 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 blah. Yeah. But I think for like most people, they don't. I mean, they'll probably be like, oh, they switched candidates, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, ultimately, I think it really hasn't like kicked in for like the vast majority of the population yet, right? It doesn't. I don't think. I think if you talk to most people who are like going about their everyday lives and like, oh, what do you think about Tim Walz or whatever the VP candidate is? They'd be like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Right?
I didn't know who he was. Exactly. I didn't even know he was.
I went to school in Minnesota and I didn't know who he was. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, okay, right? So, and also, like, let's be honest, the VP candidate doesn't matter, right? Like historically, it's like no one really cares. It's like there's very few cases where the VP candidate actually matters.
But she picked him for the same reasons that she was picked. He's like the token white guy now for her. Right? It kind of flipped. He's like the old white man. She was like the stereotypical minority pick. Now, like, she flipped it, I guess.
So it's interesting if you want to look at it in that perspective. So policy-wise, he's pretty liberal, actually. But like the perception of him socially, he's kind of got like this aw shucks Midwestern wholesome like football coach. Like, he's relatable. Like he's relatable in a way that, like, let's say RFK is not relatable, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's a very good point.
So he's kind of like, the thesis, I think, for a lot of people is like he's kind of like this like unity type. Like, he appeals to like a broad spectrum of potential voters, right? Like, he has like fairly progressive policies, so he'll appeal to that part of the party. Although that, I don't think that's very smart because they don't need to do that anyway. But he's also palatable enough or relatable enough in like the Midwestern states where people who, might think that, oh, Kamala is like too West Coast institution might be like, oh, okay, but this guy, so true, it's a balance, right? You have to balance. They always try to balance it out a little bit.
Balance the candidate.
Yeah, they try to balance the candidate a little bit, like kind of like how Joe Biden picked Kamala, like a balance. So that's, but I mean, honestly, like, we're still a long way away. The economy is the earning reports have been not great.
Oh yeah, actually feels very doomy gloomy right now.
Yeah. So a lot of things can happen between now and November 4th. So who knows?
Yeah, November. Yeah, so that's true.
So you think now the situation looks much less certain compared to like a few weeks ago before Kamala Harris came to, be nominated?
Yeah, that's true. I think like when it was Biden versus Trump, especially after Trump got shot, it was a fait accompli, like people like to say, right? And now there is like, at least a viable alternative Like, we talked about this last time. There was like the
Yeah.
never Trump, never Biden
Yeah.
camp, and then like people who were like in the never
Yeah.
Biden camp are now up for
That's
grabs,
true.
right?
Yeah.
And they're definitely not going to vote for
That's
Trump,
true.
or probably not going to vote for
Yeah.
Trump,
The
right?
narrative has somewhat changed.
Yeah. So it will be. I think it'll be a much closer election. It will be. I think it'll be very contested this this cycle. But I don't know
So,
because her policies are like the problem is like if you talk about it from like an impact point of view, it's hard to understand or gauge what she will actually do. Right, that's a challenge with Kamala Harris. I think that's the
Yeah.
main
That's
complaint,
true.
is because
That's
when she
true.
was running, this is like American politics. It's not a criticism of her. Like the primary system, how it works, right? Like because when you're in the primary, the only people that are voting, the only people whose opinion matters, are primary voters within your party, right? And so those will
Yeah.
obviously
Correct.
be more
Correct.
extreme. So people's positions always start at like a far extreme end of the ideological spectrum. And as you get
They
further
move in.
into the election cycle, more and more towards the general election, they start to like tack more towards the center, right? And so you see this for every candidate. And so a lot of like her positions that she had been on record as supporting or whatever like a couple of years ago, she's basically like renounced the vast majority of them. And right now the challenge is
Mm.
like it's kind of like the same old hat with Biden. She's like, oh, look at me, I'm not Donald Trump, but I still
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
really.
They have nothing else to go
There's
on, I
nothing
guess.
really affirmative, right? You don't know what you're not voting for, but you don't know what you are voting for, and that's I think her challenge, her messaging challenge in the next 3 months. It's like,
That's
what
so
is
hard.
like your
That's so hard.
vision? But this is the thing, right? Like
is that
Trump, say what you will, he creates a vision of America. Like he's really good at painting
Actually,
a
he
vision.
does. Yeah, he
Like
does.
whether you
He
like it or
does.
not,
He does. Yeah.
he creates one. So, and then every presidential candidate has to do this. They have to like create a vision and they have to kind of sell you on this vision, right?
Like the Obama hope,
Yeah,
right?
like hope and
but
dreams
but
and all that stuff. It's the same stuff.
but do you think that that kind of vagueness is deliberate? Because I mean the left or people in the middle, there are lots of different opinions, and whichever that's clear, and you know that you are not able to inspire the way that Trump inspires, so the strategy is that keep it vague for as long as you can, and focus the attention on, so okay, this is the guy you don't want,
Maybe.
because I think the
I mean
strategies are not
that's
that
how
dumb,
Biden
right?
won last time. That's basically how he
Yeah,
won
yeah,
last time.
exactly.
So it's not. It's
Well, there was stronger vitriol for Trump back then, I guess. There's a lot of fatigue now.
Hey,
no. I think yeah. What's up?
one question I want to ask you about immigration, and obviously this is something that I mean, if you read press, that is what people no, if you not if you read press, you read press, they don't talk as much about it, but if you uh, listen to the speeches by Trump, etc., they talk about that a lot, the Republicans. And last night I had dinner with somebody who runs a series of restaurants in the U.S. and
Yeah.
who just passing by Singapore. He was telling me that, well, and he talked to a few people, I mean, obviously Chinese, who crossed in the U.S. In the last 2 years, and he said it's it's very generous, right? I mean, it's almost deliberate, right? You guys cross the border, and of course, as you cross the border, you destroy a passport, and then you go and approach the officers. And officer would ask you, "Hey, where do you want to go to?" And you said, "Okay, I have this cousin in New York. I want to join him."
Uh-huh.
Then he will sort of give you some food, give you some cash, and put you on a bus. And once you go there, and depending on the state, they will treat you differently. But the worst you can do is to spend a few days in prison, then come out, then somebody will take care of you, and then you join the workforce.
Right. Okay.
He said he sees that a lot, and he doesn't know what exactly is the dynamics behind it, right? So who controls the border? I mean, the officers there, who deploys them, and once people sort of get to different states, I mean, who takes control of all this settlement? Because uh, it seems he said it seems too easy nowadays for people to just walk into US and find a way to work there.
So I will tell you one story. I was having dinner with a friend in Chicago, and so she's a physician, so she sees, she works at Northwestern University in the pediatric department, so she sees a lot of different people from different walks of life. And she was telling me the story about how there was this family that got into the U.S. seeking asylum, but the key point is they were seeking asylum while they were in Canada. And it's like, who's persecuting you in Canada, right? But basically, the story is like
Trudeau!
they showed up at the border and they're like, we're seeking asylum, and then they're like, come on over. I mean, I don't know, man. Like this border question is like such a it's hard because like the stats are so unreliable on it. But just like but just like as a human being, right? You can see the demographic makeup of America change. It's changed noticeably in the last 10 years, right? Like, and again, this is not an opinion of whether it's good or bad. I'm just saying, like, you go walk around any major city in America, or even any like small towns, right? Not even major cities, right? The percentage of like, I guess Hispanic, Latino, whatever the proper term is, like population, is like significantly higher, like much higher than it would be possible if they got in there legally, or if they got into the country legally. That's like objectively true. And I think this is I think what the conflict is, right? Because a lot of people are like, I see with my eyes, like what is happening, but you have a narrative that's being pushed, which by one party, which is saying that like, no, what you see is not true. But you know, like lying with statistics is not that hard to do, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just but yeah. I mean, technically, to answer your question, technically, it should be Customs and Border Patrol. They should be the one administering the border.
So that they are run federally, right?
Yes, Customs and Border Patrol should be. It's federal because the states can't run.
It's also.
I mean, the states also do. So,
the states have their own, but they also shuffle the problem around.
Yeah.
They just ship them off to other states, and other states will have. Yeah, I mean, it's why the West Coast has so many problems, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this before, right?
But it is a real issue, right? Yeah. Because like it's like I mean, you know, a country should have borders, and there's a sustainable number of people that can be allowed in every year, and I don't think these are controversial statements.
Do you think the change in demographics would have deep implications? Because I mean, of course, coming from the perspective of Singapore, and when it got its independence, it had certain sort of mix and percentage of different ethnic groups, and you see over the years the government tries very hard to maintain that ratio because that's what makes the society stable. And once the changes, no matter in which way it changes, it sort of disrupts. And
correct.
And it's something that people are very careful about. They of course, if you look at history, you have stories like the ancient Rome, right? When they started introducing the Germans, the Germanic peoples as Roman citizens, obviously that changed the Rome forever.
Yeah.
And the same can be said for Byzantium. The same can be said for the Arab Empire, right? They introduced the Turks, then Turks took over.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like every generation has this conflict, right? It's like the immigrants that came for the previous, like it was like for a long time the U.S. it was the Irish. The Irish were like the dirty ones, right? Before that it was like the Italians, and then I think it was like Italians, and it was Irish. It was like the Chinese, and now it's like the Hispanics. You're right. Every single every single generation has this exact dynamic. It's nothing new. But I think what is new is this is the generation where it's so in your face, right? Like if you because it's a technology thing, right? So there's multiple trends converging. Like if you think about it, like even 50 years ago, right? If you didn't live in a border state and there was like a huge influx of immigrants, it's a very localized problem, right? It was only localized at ports of entry, and maybe like something like maybe a 100, 200 mile radius of wherever that port of entry, where the port of entry was, right? But now, like everyone everywhere in the world can see exactly what's happening everywhere else in the world, right? So what went from like
it's magnified.
So what went from like probably like a more localized issue is now like I think a national issue, right? And that's a big change.
And also think about Irish Italians. Do they make more than like 10% of the population?
Yeah, this is you're right. This is also a thing. They would never, I think, more than I think the Hispanic population in the U.S. is like 20% now. It's significant. It's huge.
and it's still tilting. So many years ago, when I was studying in France, I had this course called European Union. The guy was an old professor from Switzerland, and he was making predictions. He said, "Oh, in 100 years' time, U.S. will be a Hispanic majority country,
Yep.
and Russia will be a Muslim country."
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, well, all of Europe now, right? That's the big complaint in Europe. Like they have the huge Muslim wave coming in.
Well, that's what the riot's about.
That's like the yeah.
But it's also it's multiple
rest of it.
things, right? It's also like socioeconomic. I think the economy's not doing very well. Like people don't feel like they're very well off, and so whenever this happens, right, that like aggravates any negative perception that already exists. Like I do believe, like personally, that like if you move to a country, you need to, and you're immigrating there forever, right? You need to make an effort to assimilate, right? Like you need to have some sort of like shared national identity to function as a nation state. And so like if you go and you don't integrate these people properly, right, this is where the friction comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well,
immigration.
Let's close out, Dave. Are we popping champagne? Are you successfully on the personal work front? How are you doing on your raising your fund for your industrial real estate play?
Oh, it's good. We're on track to acquire probably 8 digits in asset this year.
8 digits. Wow.
8.
Very good.
I'm on track to acquire 8, but I'm not liquid, so
still grinding. Still grinding.
Well, it's a problem with these kinds of. Well, like the fund's not big enough where I can charge a massive carry and live large off my carry.
Not yet.
Live large off my fee, my acquisition fee.
That's a good thing.
I only make money when we have like a realized exit, right? So
liquidity event.
Yeah, correct. I only make money when it's a liquidity event. So, but we've gotten a lot of interest from investors about a yield product. Right, I think there's a lot of people looking to place money in a relatively safe instrument that pays somewhere between like 10% is kind of the sweet spot number I've heard.
That's hard to get these days, right?
We can do it.
I mean, it's going to change.
We can do it. 10% is very doable for what we do. Typically, we didn't look at that so much because we were more focused on like IRR, long-term value appreciation. It's a bit of a trade-off between these two things. But I think enough people have expressed interest in this, so that's something that we're like exploring directionally. There's larger funds that we're looking to like co-sponsoring or like co-GPing with, essentially.
So that affects your portfolio construction and how you acquire for your next assets, I guess.
Well, so one thing we initially thought about is we could take our current asset and actually sell it to our new portfolio. Because our assets that we already have, that's a stabilized asset that has like a decent yield, right? So then it's like a win-win for everyone. You get to exit your own investors, new people get something. The close process is much cleaner. It's much quicker because like everything's clean.
One buyer.
Well, no, also everything's clean, right? Like you have clean environmental,
you need the work
you
already.
have clean legal, clean title, clean blah 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 blah. Right? It's super straightforward. So you can save a lot on the transaction of the actual deal. And as long as you disclose it and everyone agrees, it's not an issue, right? Yeah. It's just when people do the stuff and they don't disclose, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah.
So Jianggan, if you know any high net worth
people
that want to deploy some assets in stable yield generating products, hit me up. I'll pay you.
Yes, Midwest very stable, industry growing.
No, it is. These are very stable. Like we see a lot of deals that are like long-term sale leasebacks at like 10% yield.
Yeah. I'm sure Jianggan's meeting a lot of these big LPs.
Yeah, but Jianggan doesn't want to introduce me. He doesn't want to introduce me for whatever reason. I'm a bit hurt by this, Jianggan.
You get a cut, Jianggan. Get a cut.
Yeah, of course I'll pay you.
Brokerage.
It's like every event I go to, there are like, 20 attendees of the event, then 50 private bankers lurking outside the event trying to chat to everyone they want.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm going through. That's why I'm going through you. You can facilitate.
Singapore's a weird place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. Send me the prospectus.
I've sent it to you before.
Have you?
Yes, many times. Have
Okay,
I?
send me
I'll
again.
send to you. I'll send you one for the
I
last
don't
one.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any final closing thoughts?
Nope. Nope.
No, where's June?
All right, guys. June, I don't
Yeah,
know.
what
He's
happened to June?
so busy these days.
Is he?
Yeah, he's. I don't. This week I have no clue. He was very quiet.
Oh.
He's sending me stuff about Cradle and Mrenti and. Oh, he's probably going for a Cradle grant again. He got one last time. I guess he can get another one.
I mean, I don't know. He needs to think beyond Malaysia. It's such a big world out there.
I agree in general, but I don't know. He can make a little niche here, I guess, first, and then expand after. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, cool.
We'll try to get him on next week then. Oh, I want to hear about his biochar pit thingy.
Yeah. What is he? Yeah, it's fertilizer or something. Is that what he's doing?
No, it's not fertilizer. He's taking waste and charring it and then burying it. That's what he's doing.
Okay, sure.
Anyway, good episode, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.